Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of Darlene's Creative Challenge, Journal Prompt Challenge. Today is day 4 and we're working on work with an old photograph. And the reason I chose that is because of the trifold I made yesterday. I wanted to stick some things in the little pockets. And I did find an old photo album with a whole bunch of these absolutely adorable little photographs. The fellow that I bought it from at an antique market asked me, he gave me his card and he asked me to contact him once I made something out of them. So once I finish this, I will actually send him a picture of a little photograph thing that we've made for our journals. So this is what we're going to be making today. And I'm going to be using my Tim Holtz Sidekick to cut out a little die cut and cut down the photograph, and we're going to work with that. So I'm just going to clear this all out of the way here real quickly. And we're going to get started with, first of all, marking our cards. Let me just move these out of the way. And we're going to be working with some scrap pieces of old file folder and some little brads. I'm going to use black cardstock. And these are the photographs I'm going to be using. And I'm just going to use a little tiny cutting mat that I had. It's pretty rough shape. So let's just move some of this stuff out of the way. Oops. And let's first of all start with our card and get this all distressed. Going to stamp our number 4 on there and our little circle wreath. There we go. Close that. We're done with those two. And we're going to grab the little book. 1, 2, so we're going to put number 4 here. That has my measurement on it. Let me just write that down somewhere. Need that measurement. Alright, so the measurement on the back was the size of the card, 3 5/8 by 2 3/8. Okay, we're good. So we're going to glue this into our little booklet and then we'll get started. Number 4. And we'll quickly write in the back of day 4. Working with old photographs, cardstock, file folders, Sidekick, die, and distress ink. And we're going to add a few brads. And that's on January 4th, 2020. There we go. So we're going to set that aside, get that out of our way here. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut some of my pieces of black cardstock. Now while I use my Sizzix, and you should normally clamp this down the table, but I'm not going to because I'm only doing 4. I'm going to do these 4 photographs today. So I've already done one. I was checking out to see the roundness of the die cut that I like. So I'm going to set this on here and add my die cut on top. This is just a scrap piece of, I use the Sidekick plate And then I take a piece of my cutting mat. This is the one that I had. It was a very large one. And my husband came in and set a hot cup of tea on it one day, and I got a big bubble in it. And I used it for painting on and everything, and it got pretty ratty. So then I cut it up into little pieces. So I've actually just double-sided tape. Use double-sided tape to add the cutting mat onto this. And because I have to make up for this thickness, I am using my embossing folder plate instead of the other bottom plate. So I'll have the right thickness when I add my little thin-lit die in there. And so what I do is I put my paper down on there. I add my die cut. I think this will fit in there. And then Liz, hi Liz, gave me the idea of using a little tiny piece of washi tape. And you just, because these thinlits move all around, all over the place, and sometimes when you put the top on, they make it move. I just add a little piece of washi tape right on top, just to hold it in position. And that didn't work because it's down too far. There we go. Like that. So it's just holding the die on top of the paper. And then I'm going to add my little top piece. And we're going to put it through the side kick. It's jumping all over the place because it's not attached to the tabletop. And then we're going to take that off. Pull our washi tape off. Here's my little frame. Always save the inside pieces. These can be used. They're perfect size for something. And then there is my photograph frame. So I'm going to do another one. You can see my die's getting a little bent, but that's okay. So we're going to put that on there. Make sure it's within my little scrap piece of paper. And I'm only using scrap pieces of paper because I didn't want to cut up a whole piece, but I may have to if I want to do two more. All right, so we're just going to put that in our side kick. Run it through. It's jumping all over the place. There we go. Take that off. Stick it on my plate. There's another one of those little frames. Another of that little piece of card. And there's my other frame. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is grab my this is a sheet of my black cardstock. In order to put it through the little side kick, it has to be the width of your plate. So I just cut my pieces about 2.5 inches wide. Doesn't matter the length, but I just cut them about 2.5 inches wide so that I can set them on there. So I'm just going to cut a quick piece of paper on this. 2.5 inches wide. And about 4 inches. So I cut them, I just cut a strip about 2.5 inches wide, and then I just cut it in half, and that's going to be for my other two pieces here. And we'll get these through the thingy as quickly as possible. Actually, I'm going to try and cut 2 pieces at once, see how that works. Sometimes it's a little too much for my little plate, but let's try it. We'll live dangerously today. All right, let's put that on there. Oops, bring our side kick a little closer. Just so it catches it. Oh, it's going to be tight. But the nice thing about using the cutting mat is that it's flexible, so your little die cut will actually go into it. So, all right, let's see how we did. Take our little piece of washi tape off. Oh, and it cut both pieces. Good. And we'll take off the frame. And then just punch that little guy out. And there we go. We have 2 frames. Perfect. Okay. So there is the frame for the photo. We won't need this little guy anymore, so let's move him out of the way. And I'm going to move my scraps out of the way. And the die cut. So next, I'm going to take a piece of the file folder. And I just grabbed some quick scraps here that I think will be the right size. Yep. So then what I did was I measured the frame and just added a little bit. So I think it was 2 3/8 by 3 5/8. So I'm going to cut these pieces down to that size. And then I'm going to take my corner rounder and I'm going to round out the edges. And because this die cut has more of a square corner than a round corner, I want them to match. So once I cut these to size and round the corners, I'm going to actually punch these corners and make them a little rounder. And you can see the difference here. I just rounded those corners out a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these and then round out all the corners, and then I'm going to distress. Take my brush and I'm just going to distress the edges of this back piece. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just distressing the last piece of my file folder. There we go. So I've done 4 pieces of the file folder. And again, I just measured a little bit wider than my die cut frame, and then I rounded out the corners, and then I rounded out the corners of my frame as well so that they wouldn't be as square, so it fits kind of nicely on top of that. So then we take our, I'm just going to set these aside, we take our photograph and we just place the frame over top of it to kind of see where you want to be cutting this. And then you can either use a pencil, I'm just going to move this distress pad out of the way here. And you can draw around it because I'm going to be cutting it a little bit smaller than the actual picture. So right along that frame, right along the bottom, and there. So I know I'm going to be cutting here. But then what I do is once I've got the pencil marks, I'm actually going to cut about 1/8 of an inch onto the inside so that it'll fit inside, because I have a very, very small frame here, and I just want to make sure I get a little bit of that picture on the inside. So I've marked that one. And let's see, we've got another one here. I love the look on this little boy's face. Oh, it's just adorable. Okay. Again, just get some measurements here. This little guy's got a broken foot. So we want to try and get some of that in the picture as well. And he's all dressed up for his Sunday best. He's a cutie. Now these pictures are from 1943-ish. This was a family photo album. And I believe the fellow that I got these from, they were his family, and he was in his 70s, I believe. So he was one of the boys in this picture. So there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and trim these down. Okay, we've gone ahead and cut down the photographs, and they will fit on the back. And I want them to fit within that little frame, like that. So they're just fitting on there fairly perfectly. And then I'm going to take my glue and I'm just going to run a little bead along the sides just to hold that. Hold on, I got a little bit of it. There we go. Let's try again. Yeah, it's better. A little bit down the sides to hold that. And then at the top, I'm just going to do 2 lines here. And on the bottom, this is what's going to be holding it in place more or less. And then we make sure we have our little guy. And then you can just adjust it as you need it. So there we go. So there's one of our little photos. I believe he's in, it looks like a little army. He's got little wings on his shirt. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next one. And the same thing, just a little bead down the side, just to tack the sides. And then 2 lines on the top. You don't want to go right to the edge at the top because the photo doesn't go that far. And then just across the bottom here to tack it. And the same thing, because I've cut them so that they pretty much fit within that frame. You only have a couple of seconds to move it around. That looks good. So there's our second one. And then same with this one. I'm going to do 2 lines up here. And a couple of lines down there. We're going to position him in the center. There we go. Make sure he's where I want him to be. Yep. Got him nice and raised up high because I want to see that poor little foot. And then this one makes me giggle. All right, and we're just going to put a couple of lines across the bottom here and put our squinting little fellow. I think his name is Douglas. Age 2. And I didn't even notice before, but Douglas is picking his nose. Isn't that nice? You pick them well, Darlene. Okay, so there are our photographs. I guess I don't need to put that on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to place these on the back or on the front of this card. And I'm going to glue that on, and then I'm going to take my awl and I'm going to punch some holes into the corners, and I'm going to add my brad. So let's glue all these little pieces on. Make sure you get right to the corners so they don't curl up. And just a little bit of glue there. We'll get Douglas and his brother all glued on. There. So we have our little back picture. Now I was originally going to use black, another piece of black cardstock for the back of the behind the photo, but then it just kind of took away from the photo and the fact that I'm using that vintagey coloring in my book. This will actually go a lot nicer in the book than just all black. So we're going to go ahead and glue all these on, and we're going to punch some holes. Okay, we've got them all glued on, and now I'm going to take my little cutting pad here, and I'm going to try and center. I'm using these 2 lines on either side so that when I punch my holes, I can use that line to keep them even. So I'm just guesstimating where I want them, but I'm using that line as my guide. So we're just going to punch a little hole there. And another little hole here. Like that. And then same, I'm using this line. Maybe I'm just, oh, that's good, I guess, right there. And then I'll go to this side and using that line, just kind of go in about 2/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch maybe. There we go. So I've got some little holes punched, and then you can just make them a little bigger to get that all in there. Or not the all, sorry, excuse me, the brad. There we go. That. And then I'm going to take some of these little tiny brads that I have, and I'm just going to punch them through the holes. If I go through, because I don't know if I made the hole big enough. I'm just going to make that hole a little bigger. There we go. Let's try that. That works better, perfectly. Okay. This one's got a little bit of his legs. There we go. Oop, just pop the bread out. Okay, let's get that guy back in there. Let's put this one in, these two in, and then we'll flip it over and we'll get that one in. And one more. There we go. So we got our 4 brads in. Ouch. We're just going to flip that over. Well, I guess I made that hole a little too big. The brad keeps falling out. Okay. And again, we're going to take our awl and we're just going to try and get between the 2 little legs and push down with your awl, and it'll help flatten out that little, keep it nice and tight to your paper. That little brad is not wanting to stay in, so we will do him last. There we go. And put you back in. Sit, boo-boo, sit. Okay. There we go. And we'll just roll him out. And again, I just take a little piece of masking tape, and I'm just going to cut a little piece off. You don't need a very big piece, but you just want to cover that up so that it doesn't poke through your paper. Back on there. And I'll cut this one. There. So that just covers it up so that it doesn't poke through. And just give it a good rub, make sure it's nice and flat. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a book page. This is the paperback that I used last year in my challenges for poking my holes for my signatures. And it's pretty rough and it's actually starting to fall apart. So I left it here and I just dug it out of the closet, and I'm going to use some of the pages from this book. And what I'm going to do is cut a piece and cover the back of this. So there's a little bit of a book page in the back there. And then I'm just going to take some lined paper and distress both of them and glue that on. So I'm going to go ahead and cut some of the book pages to fit the back of this and round the corners. And then I'm going to look for some other lined paper to use for the back. All right, we've got our 4 brads in each corner, and I've gone ahead and taped the corners of each. And I'm going to make sure these photographs are upright. Okay, so those are my 4 pieces. I found some scraps out of an old journal. This is the last of them. I've used these in a couple other projects, and I think these are the last few pages. So I've gone ahead and first of all cut the book pages down to the same size as the backing, which was the 2 3/8 by 3 5/8. And I'm going to distress the edges of those. And then I'm going to take my little scrap pieces of paper, and I've cut them a little bit smaller than the book page so that it will sit within the book page like that. So I'm going to distress both of these, and then I'm going to glue them onto the backs of each of the cards. So they'll have a little journaling spot on the back of each of them. Like that. So I'm going to go ahead and distress those and glue those on, and then we'll see the finished product. All right, so we've gone ahead and glued on the book page underneath, and they were both distressed, and then I added my lined paper on top. So we have 4 new little photos that will go into, they may go into, let's see if they fit, the trifold that I made yesterday. So what I wanted to do was put some photos inside the little pocket here, little pockets of the trifold, because the paper in the background has old vintage photos on it from an old family history book that I had. I'm just going to glue this little bit down here. It's part of the envelope sticking up here. Sorry, my glue is giving me a hard time. There we go. There. So now I'll slide that little guy in there. So we have some photos in the little envelopes. Actually, I'll put this little guy in. He's cute. There. And that is my little trifold that I made on day 3. And that will hold some of the little photo cards, and I'll just stick this in one of the other pockets that I have. But again, you can journal on them, and once I get going, I think one of the prompts is add a word, use your words today. So I may go through and add some words onto some of my things that I've already made. I may add a little picture down here that describes, a little word down here that describes the picture, and then add some words to some of my other images as well. So there is day 4, playing with an old photograph. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave your comments below, and please like the video, and I hope you'll follow along to day 5. Thanks so much for watching.